The sun beat down mercilessly on the vast, barren Mojave Desert, its heat rising in waves that shimmered above the cracked earth. Dr. Caleb Harris adjusted his wide-brimmed hat, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. The landscape stretched endlessly before him, an ocean of sand and jagged rocks. His boots crunched against the dry, parched soil as he moved slowly, methodically, across the desert. The weight of his equipment, heavy with tools and instruments, seemed to mirror the weight in his chest. Caleb was a man of science, a seasoned archaeologist and geologist with a sharp mind and a relentless pursuit of knowledge. In his early 40s, he was no stranger to long days under the scorching sun, tracking mineral anomalies or searching for signs of lost civilizations. His colleagues often marveled at his dedication, his single-minded focus on the work. But they didn't know the truth, the part of him that had become hollow and distant after the accident. His wife, Rachel, had died in a car crash 5 years ago. The loss had shattered him, and though he kept moving forward with his career, the passion had gone out of his life. Science was his escape, a world of facts and certainty where he could bury the overwhelming grief. The desert, with its quiet, unfeeling expanse, had become his refuge, even if it was devoid of the warmth he once found in life. For weeks, Caleb had been chasing strange mineral readings from deep within this desolate stretch of the Mojave. The signals had been faint, inconsistent, almost like a whisper from a world long forgotten. But every time he thought he might be on the verge of a breakthrough, the readings would dissipate, leaving him with nothing but dust and frustration. Today, like all the others, seemed destined to be another failure. He crouched, his hands adjusting the settings on his portable scanner. The device hummed softly, its screen flickering with lines of data. His eyes narrowed as he reviewed the results. No new readings, just the same old static. He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. The desert air was thick with heat, and his thoughts drifted to Rachel. It was then that the scanner beeped, a sharp, insistent sound that cut through his haze of thoughts. His breath caught in his throat as he quickly checked the readings again. This wasn't right. This was different. The signal was stronger now, pulsing steadily, unmistakably metallic. His heart began to race, adrenaline surging through his veins. A metallic object buried beneath the sand? Caleb's mind scrambled for answers. He stood up quickly, his knees creaking in protest from the long hours of walking. He glanced over the vast desert landscape, a sense of urgency washing over him. Could this be it? Could he have finally found something after all this time? He grabbed his shovel and made his way to the ridge where the signal was strongest, each step quickening with the hope that perhaps today would be different. The sun beat down on him, but he barely noticed now, too absorbed in the pull of the mystery beneath the sand. His boots sank into the loose earth, and the scent of dry dust filled his nostrils as he climbed higher. When he reached the top, his eyes scanned the horizon. There, nestled in the dip of the land, was something that didn't belong. At first, it was just a shadow, a glint that caught the light in an unnatural way. As he descended toward it, his pulse quickened. The object was large, its shape an angular, geometric form unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, as though the very surface of the object was alive. Caleb's breath hitched in his chest. The object stretched nearly 200 feet in length, its surface a dark, iridescent material that seemed to absorb and reflect the light all at once. He knelt beside it, his hand shaking slightly as he brushed away the loose sand. The object wasn't just metallic. It was something entirely different, too sleek, too precise to be human-made. His mind raced as he observed the patterns etched into the surface. Angular, geometric shapes crisscrossed the hull, each lying perfect in its symmetry, too deliberate to be natural. As he moved along its length, he noticed that the ship, or whatever it was, appeared to have suffered significant damage. There were deep gouges, as if something had struck it with incredible force. He climbed cautiously along the edge, his fingers brushing over the smooth surface, half expecting it to be cold, but finding it warm, as if the object had been waiting for him. As he neared the midpoint, his eyes widened in disbelief. This wasn't just a ship. This was something else entirely. The silence around him felt oppressive now. The wind had died, leaving only the soft hum of the desert air. Caleb stepped back, taking in the enormity of the object. This wasn't just a discovery. This was a revelation. For a moment, he stood there, frozen, as a single thought flashed through his mind. This changes everything. Caleb stood frozen for several long seconds, his mind racing as his hands trembled at his sides. The sheer magnitude of what lay before him was overwhelming. The object in front of him, half buried in the sand, felt as if it were not part of this world. The sun reflected off its surface in a way that made it appear to shimmer with a kind of silent energy. Caleb's pulse quickened, and despite the oppressive heat, he felt a chill crawl down his spine. His fingers brushed against the rough edge of the metallic hull, the coolness of it a sharp contrast to the sweltering desert air. The object was massive, easily larger than any ship he'd seen in his career. This was no ancient ruin, no relic of a forgotten civilization. This was something far beyond his wildest theories. His eyes scanned the surface, noticing the intricate patterns that covered it, like a form of alien script, or perhaps a design meant to serve some function he couldn't yet comprehend. The excitement was almost too much to bear. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as he moved to the breach and the hull damage that had torn through its side, revealing jagged metal beneath. The edges of the opening were twisted, as though the craft had been struck with a force far beyond what any terrestrial object could endure. His scientific curiosity drove him forward. He was no stranger to the discovery of strange phenomena, but nothing in his years of study had prepared him for this moment. This was real. His entire body seemed to hum with the raw energy of the unknown. Caleb hesitated only for a brief moment, glancing over his shoulder at the vast, empty expanse of the desert that surrounded him. He was alone out here. There were no other scientists, no authorities, no one to help him interpret what he was about to find. But it didn't matter. Desire to understand overwhelmed every other instinct. He had to know what was inside. He had to be the first to see it. Caleb climbed through the breach with a grunt of effort, carefully stepping over twisted fragments of metal and debris. As he entered, the atmosphere inside the craft was markedly different. It was cool, almost refreshingly so, and the air was thick with the faintest hum, like the sound of a distant, vibrating chord played on a cosmic instrument. The interior of the craft was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Gone were the straight lines and hard angles of earthly engineering. Here, the walls and surfaces seemed to flow, curving and undulating like something organic. It felt as though the very space around him was alive, breathing. His flashlight illuminated strange, translucent panels embedded in the walls, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. The soft light revealed a series of angular, crystalline structures that jutted from the walls like jagged spires. Their surfaces shimmered with an iridescent glow, shifting in hue as though they had a mind of their own. Caleb marveled at them for a moment, his scientific curiosity in full force. What kind of materials were these? Could they be natural, or were they part of the ship's design? He barely noticed the deeper hum in the air, the hum that seemed to grow stronger the longer he stood inside. He moved deeper into the craft, his boots making soft echoes on the smooth, alien floors. The room he entered appeared to be a control center of sorts. The walls were covered in strange symbols and intricate patterns, almost as if the very language of the ship had been woven into its structure. A console sat in the middle of the room, covered with more crystalline structures, their surfaces pulsating gently with light. Caleb approached cautiously, his eyes scanning over the alien controls. There were no buttons, no switches, nothing he could immediately recognize. Yet there was a sense that the craft was waiting for him, as though it was anticipating his next move. He felt a tug in the air, a magnetic pull drawing him toward the console. His breath caught in his throat as he moved closer, reaching out with a trembling hand. "Hello?" He called out, his voice breaking the silence of the ship. It felt foolish to speak, as if he were calling into the void, but he couldn't help it. The moment his words left his mouth, the ship seemed to come alive. The crystalline structures flickered, and the faint hum that filled the air shifted, growing more pronounced. Then the most unexpected thing happened. A holographic display sprang to life in the center of the room, flickering with shimmering lights before coalescing into an image. Caleb stepped back in shock. The projection was like nothing he had ever seen. It was a map of the stars, but not one he recognized. It was vast, complex, and displayed in a way that made his head spin. But it wasn't just a star map, it seemed to be alive, changing constantly, as if the ship was showing him its very thoughts. The stars shifted and realigned, blinking on and off in a pulsating rhythm dot as Caleb continued to stare at the map, the symbols on the console began to shift as well, forming shapes he could almost make sense of. They were diagrams, charts, perhaps instructions. But then something more startling happened. The ship responded to his voice. The holograms flickered again, and for the briefest moment, they aligned to form a symbol that Caleb recognized. It was simply a human figure. Then another symbol appeared, followed by a third. A ship. This ship. The map shifted again, and a line began to draw itself from one distant star to Earth. Caleb's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the path dot, and then, at the edge of the holographic map, a countdown began. Days, hours, minutes. Caleb's heart raced. This was more than just a simple discovery. This was a message. The ship was alive, and it had a purpose. It was waiting for something. For him? For humanity? The hum in the air grew louder. More displays flickered to life, each one filled with symbols he didn't understand, but they were all moving toward one thing. A decision. Caleb's breath quickened as the countdown flickered in front of him, the numbers pulsing in rhythmic intervals, each passing second adding a weight to the air. That made the ship feel even more alive, more aware of his presence. The glowing symbols on the walls shifted again, morphing into intricate designs he couldn't decipher. But the ship's energy, its intent, was unmistakable. It was as if the craft itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Waiting. For him. A deep, harmonic hum echoed from the walls, and Caleb instinctively took a step back, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. The holographic star map pulsated with light, the path from the alien ship to Earth becoming clearer as though it were drawing him into its orbit. He couldn't help but feel that the ship, or whatever intelligence was behind it, was communicating with him, not just with symbols and light, but with an undeniable force that gripped his very being. "Can you understand me?" Caleb whispered, though part of him knew the question was absurd. Still, there was something so deeply intuitive about the way the ship seemed to respond to his presence. The last word he spoke had triggered something. A reaction. The holograms flickered again. The countdown shifted to show the trajectory of the ship's crash, depicting it spiraling toward Earth. The imagery seemed almost alive, as if telling a story. Caleb's mind raced, trying to make sense of the projections. But then something unexpected happened. A new hologram appeared, this one much larger than the rest. It filled the air in front of him, and Caleb could almost feel the cold metallic essence of it pressing against him. The image showed humanoid figures, tall and elegant, standing in front of what appeared to be their ship. The figures were elongated, their limbs thin and graceful, but their faces. Caleb shuddered. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, their features delicate, almost fragile in their structure, with large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. The skin was pale, smooth, and seemingly translucent in places, as though it had evolved to survive the harshness of space. Then, in the next moment, the projection shifted. The same humanoid figures were now shown beside the very ship Caleb was inside of. But this time, their expressions were different. They were not calm. They were desperate. The ship's AI, still responding to Caleb's voice, shifted to show an image of what appeared to be a massive planetary disaster. The once serene star system where these beings had come from was now a crumbling, dying world. Caleb could see it in the way the ship's projections moved. There was destruction, the sky burning, planets cracking apart. "Refugees," Caleb whispered. To himself, the words coming out before he fully realized their meaning. His eyes widened as the reality of it sank in. These beings had been fleeing a dying world. The ship's AI responded with more images, more symbols. Caleb's heart raced as he pieced them together in his mind. The aliens had traveled far, seeking refuge. Their world had become uninhabitable due to environmental collapse. They were survivors, not conquerors. The holographic images shifted. Once more, this time showing a different scene, a fleet of ships traveling through space, crossing the void toward a destination. Earth. Earth was at the center of their journey. Caleb's mind began to connect the dots, and the weight of the situation came crashing down on him. This was no ordinary find. The craft in front of him wasn't just some alien relic. It was part of a larger story. These beings were coming. The countdown, the path to Earth, it all led to this singular, undeniable truth. Caleb's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flare of light from the console. His eyes snapped to the shifting holograms, which now displayed a complex array of mathematical equations, energy readings, planetary data, and most terrifyingly, a series of symbols that Caleb recognized as part of a communication matrix. He stared at them for a long moment, his brain whirling with the enormity of what was at stake. The aliens, the refugees, needed Earth. But the question gnawed at him. Did humanity need them? The ship's humming intensified, vibrating through the walls like a low, anxious pulse. The countdown flashed once more. Less than 48 hours. The incoming fleet would arrive soon, and Caleb had to make a choice. He had no idea how to react. What would humanity do if it knew about the impending arrival? Would they accept these refugees? Or would the fear of the unknown and the threat of invasion, however misunderstood, force them into war? The air around him felt thick now, like the very walls of the ship were closing in on him. It wasn't just the ship's presence he could feel, but something deeper. It was as if the alien consciousness itself was watching him, waiting for his response, for his action. The ship was alive, but it wasn't just alive, it was asking for something. His throat tightened as his gaze lingered on the countdown. Was slipping away. He walked toward the console once more, his fingers trembling as they hovered over the alien interface. His mind raced with the weight of the decision. If he activated the communication system, the ship would send a signal to the incoming fleet. It would confirm their arrival and mark Earth as a potential sanctuary. But what would that mean for humanity? Could they be trusted? Could he trust them? The symbols on the walls flickered, showing a final image, his own face, projected by the ship's AI, surrounded by the alien figures. He was central to the decision. He had the power to shape what came next, to change the course of history, for better or worse. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, suffocating, until it felt like the world around him had stopped spinning. His hand hovered over the console once more, a bead of sweat trickling down his face as the final seconds ticked away. The future of two species hung in the balance, and Caleb had no idea whether he was ready to make the call. The silence in the ship was deafening, a quiet so profound it seemed to stretch into infinity. Caleb's fingers hovered above the glowing interface, the alien symbols pulsing softly beneath his touch. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts, fear, curiosity, hope, and dread all swirling together like a storm inside him. The countdown on the display continued to tick, downward, each passing second more urgent than the last. Less than 24 hours remained. He stared at the holograms again, each one flickering with what could only be the alien race's history, their pain, their desperation. They were refugees. It was clear now, even as the ship system showed him more images of their dying world, that they hadn't come to conquer. They had come to survive. Their home had been obliterated, torn apart by forces they could neither stop nor control. They were alone, drifting in the vastness of space, searching for a place to call home. But was Earth ready for them? Was humanity ready to share its world with a race so different, so foreign in every conceivable way? His chest tightened with anxiety. He had been chasing mysteries his entire career, uncovering the secrets of ancient civilizations. But this was something entirely different. This wasn't history. This was the future. And it was in his hands. He alone held the key to the unknown, to the next step for two species on the brink of meeting. "Can you understand me?" Caleb's voice broke through the heavy silence, shaky but firm. The words hung in the air, reverberating through the ship's strange architecture. For a moment, nothing happened. The ship seemed to hold its breath, its deep hum filling the space with a subtle vibration. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as he waited for some sign, some response. And then, like an echo in the distance, the ship responded. The holographic images flickered, and a new display peered before him, one that took Caleb's breath away. A figure alien ethereal materialized in the center of the room. Tall, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light, the being's large eyes glowed softly, staring at him with an expression that was at once unfamiliar and profoundly human. The alien figure spoke, but there were no words. Instead, Caleb's mind was flooded with an image of a world, once lush and vibrant, now a shattered ruin, its cities in ruin, its sky choked with ash. It was a memory, a vision transmitted directly into his consciousness. It wasn't a dream. It was real, and it was their reality. The alien figure's form shifted, the features becoming more defined, and Caleb realized that it was not just a representation, it was a message. The ship was trying to communicate with him, not just through symbols and projections, but through the very essence of their thoughts, their memories. The bond between them had formed in ways Caleb couldn't comprehend, yet it was undeniable. The alien consciousness was reaching out, offering itself to him in the only way it could. Caleb closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the flood of images and sensations. He saw the destruction of their home, the loss of their people, the desperate flight through the stars. And he understood their journey had not been one of conquest, but one of survival. He felt the weight of their plea in his chest, a silent call for refuge, for acceptance. They were not invaders. They were refugees. The choice was his, and it felt like the weight of the universe was pressing down on him. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. His hand moved once more to the console, his fingers brushing over the smooth surface. The choice he made here would determine the fate of two species. The ship's systems had given him everything access to their memories, their fears, their hopes. But Caleb knew that the final decision couldn't be made by technology alone. He had to trust his own instincts. He spoke again, more deliberately this time. "I understand." His voice cracked, but the words felt right. The ship's eye pulsed in response, and the holographic image flickered before stabilizing into a series of new symbols. The countdown continued to tick, but now, instead of the urgency, there was a sense of calm. The ship was waiting for him to act. "Do you want to help?" Caleb whispered, more to himself than to the ship. It was a question he wasn't sure he was ready to answer, yet it felt like the only thing left to ask. In response, the hologram shifted again, and this time, Caleb saw the fleet. Hundreds of ships, all different but the same, their silhouettes cutting across the backdrop of stars. They were out there, waiting, ready to come. The countdown wasn't just a signal for their arrival. It was a measure of hope. Hope that they wouldn't be rejected, that humanity would extend its hand in peace. Caleb's heart thudded in his chest as the final image appeared, this one showing Earth, his world nestled in the vastness of space. A new line appeared on the map, drawn directly to Earth, the path clear and unwavering. The ship's systems had calculated everything. The aliens were coming, but what did it mean for humanity? What would the world do when they found out? A shiver ran down Caleb's spine as he turned away from the hologram, looking out at the breach in the ship's hull. The desert outside was still, but it felt like it was holding its breath too. The weight of the decision was heavier now, more real than ever before. He could feel the alien consciousness in the ship, and now, more than ever, he understood the gravity of what he was about to do. He wasn't just an observer anymore. He was part of this story. His actions, his choices, would define the future. With a trembling hand, Caleb reached for the comm system, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I will contact them. You have my word." The words seemed to echo through the ship, filling the hollow alien space with something human, something hopeful. The ship responded immediately, the hum growing louder as the countdown continued, now accompanied by a series of soft chimes, like a lullaby. Caleb closed his eyes for a moment, knowing that his decision had set everything in motion. The countdown was near its end, and as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Caleb knew that the next step was no longer in his hands. The hum of the ship grew louder, a steady vibration that resonated deep in Caleb's chest as he stared at the flickering countdown on the holographic display. The weight of the decision he had made was sinking in, and for the first time since he had discovered the wreckage in the desert, Caleb felt truly awake. The alien presence inside the ship, its consciousness, was no longer just a mysterious force. It was a palpable entity, and he had just promised it something no one on Earth could possibly comprehend. The stars outside the breach in the hull seemed to swirl as if acknowledging the shift in the air. Caleb's heart raced as he glanced back at the glowing map of the galaxy, the path from the alien ship to Earth now unmistakable and clear. The fleet was coming. He had made the choice. He had decided to trust them, to extend a hand of peace. But now, in the silence that followed his pledge, a terrifying thought struck him. What if the world wasn't ready? What if his decision wasn't one that humanity could accept? The fear gnawed at him. For years, Caleb had been a scientist, a seeker of truth, a man of logic. But what did that mean now? What was the truth of this encounter? Was he acting in the best interest of humanity? Or was he sealing their fate with a decision that could lead to their destruction? Caleb's hand hovered over the console again, his fingers brushing the smooth surface of the alien interface. The ship seemed to respond, shifting the display before him to show a new set of images, these ones more unsettling than the rest. A vast empty space filled with debris, broken ships, and shattered worlds. The images flashed by in quick succession, a visual history of the alien race's tragic journey, a race on the brink of extinction, fleeing from their own crumbling civilization. And then the ship projected something else, a new sequence of images that made Caleb's blood run cold. The fleets approaching Earth weren't just coming to deliver refugees. No, they were coming to make contact, but the real reason for their arrival was something deeper, something more fundamental. The fleet's arrival would signal a new beginning, but only if humanity accepted them. The alternative was unthinkable. If Earth rejected the aliens, the refugees would have no place to go. And the fleet, their only hope for survival, would retreat into the darkness of space, leaving Earth forever out of reach. The realization hit Caleb with full force. This wasn't just a discovery. This was a crossroads for both species. Countdown on the display ticked down to its final hours. The ship's hum grew more intense, the walls of the vessel vibrating under the pressure of the passing time. Caleb's breath caught in his throat as the final image appeared, a massive fleet of ships, their silhouettes cutting through the fabric of space. They were not just coming for refuge. They were coming for Earth's future. The ship's AI responded immediately, projecting a series of images that made Caleb's heart skip. They showed Earth, his world, filling up the screen in vivid, dynamic detail. The alien maps traced their course toward Earth, showing multiple entry points, indicating that this wasn't just a single ship or a single fleet. There were more coming. The stakes were impossibly high. Humanity's decision would define its place in the universe. Would it be a welcoming host, a civilization that could look beyond its own borders and help those in need? Or would it close its doors, driven by fear of the unknown? Caleb shuddered as he realized just how much weight rested on his shoulders. He had opened the door. Now, the world would have to decide whether it walked through it. There was a knock on the hull, faint at first, like the tapping of a faraway wind. Caleb stiffened, glancing around the compartment. It was a sound that had no earthly explanation. The ship seemed to breathe with him, its hum rising in pitch as if anticipating something. Caleb ... The voice came from the depths of the ship, a whisper so soft it was almost imperceptible. But Caleb could hear it clearly, as if the ship had taken on a voice, or perhaps he had begun to understand it at last. His heart skipped a beat. He stepped forward, his mind reeling with the realization that the ship was communicating directly with him. Now, not through symbols or projections, but through a subtle connection he hadn't fully understood until this moment. It wasn't just an alien consciousness. It was a conversation, a dialogue that stretched beyond language, beyond technology. Caleb, the voice repeated, this time clearer, more distinct. Time is running out. The fleet is approaching. You must make the choice. Earth's future, the future of two worlds ... is in your hands. He swallowed hard. He was no longer just an observer. He wasn't even just a scientist. In this moment, Caleb understood the true significance of his discovery. He wasn't just documenting history, was making it. The ship's tone softened as the countdown drew closer to 0. We have no place left. Only Earth. You must act. Choose. Caleb turned to the console again, his fingers hovering. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. He could feel the weight of it all, the responsibility, the urgency. He knew the world would not understand this moment. They would not understand the gravity of the decision that he, and only he, could make. He could feel the alien consciousness waiting for him to speak the words that would decide the fate of two species. The countdown reached its final minute. Caleb closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he spoke again, his voice was steady, the words clear. I will contact Earth. I will open the door. As the words left his lips, the ship's hum crescendoed, the lights flaring brighter, and the countdown finally ceased. Caleb's choice had been made. The ships were coming, and the future of humanity would never be the same. The ship responded, with a final resounding pulse, as if to affirm that the decision was set in motion. The moment of truth had arrived. And in the silence that followed, Caleb knew there was no turning back. Caleb stood in the center of the alien ship, his hand still hovering over the now quiet console. A countdown had ended, but the weight of the moment pressed down on him like a tangible force, wrapping around him, suffocating him. The decision had been made, but the enormity of it, the responsibility, still hung in the air. His pulse thudded. In his ears, and for a long moment, the only sound was the gentle hum of the ship's systems. The ship's bioluminescent panels flickered, casting a soft glow around the compartment. The alien ship, now seemingly at peace with the choice he had made, had calmed its hum, a soft rhythmic pulse that resonated through the walls like a heartbeat. It was as if the ship itself was waiting for something, waiting for the fleet to arrive. Caleb turned slowly toward the breach in the hull, where the desert stretched out before him like an endless, unbroken sea of sand. The transition from the ship's cool, alien interior to the harsh, blinding sunlight outside was jarring. He stepped closer to the opening, his boots crunching against the dry sand, and looked out over the barren landscape. The horizon was empty, still, and devoid of life. But he knew that soon, very soon, that would change. He had made the choice to open the door. He had chosen peace, chosen to trust these refugees, these beings who had traveled across the stars, escaping destruction. His hands were trembling as they brushed against the sand outside. There was no turning back now. His mind raced with the consequences of his actions. If humanity chose to reject the aliens, if fear and misunderstanding took hold, everything Caleb had just promised could unravel. The aliens would leave, and the opportunity for peace, for a new future, would be lost forever. Behind him, the ship seemed to grow quieter, the hum almost imperceptible now. It was as though it too was awaiting the final moments, those last few seconds before the fleet arrived. Caleb's throat tightened, his nerves on edge, as the full weight of the coming event loomed before him. He reached for his satellite phone, his fingers trembling as he brought it to his ear. The signal, though faint, crackled to life. He could feel the pulse of the ship in the background, its quiet presence behind him like an ever-watchful guardian. He had to contact Earth, the world, needed to know. But how could he explain? How could he make them understand? "Come on," he muttered under his breath, dialing the number to the closest scientific research facility. He knew they would be the first to validate his discovery. But they wouldn't understand. No one would. He'd be branded as a madman, a conspiracy theorist, yet this wasn't some far-fetched dream. It was real. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited for the call to connect. The seconds dragged by, each one heavier than the last. Then the call finally went through. "Dr. Harris, what is it?" Came the voice on the other end, startled, groggy, clearly not expecting a call at this hour. "It's happening," Caleb said, his voice tight with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "I need you to listen to me carefully. I've discovered something alien. It's here. A ship, a crashed alien vessel in the Mojave Desert. And there's more. There's a fleet coming." There was a long pause on the other end. Caleb could practically hear the skepticism radiating through the phone, the disbelief. But then the voice came again, quieter this time. "A fleet? Dr. Harris, you're saying this is real?" "Alien. Yes, it's real. It's happening right now. There's no time. The fleet will arrive in less than 24 hours, and Earth has to decide. We have to make a choice. If we don't accept them, they'll leave, and we might never have another chance." The line went silent. Caleb closed his eyes, the weight of his words crashing over him. The quiet that followed felt heavier than anything he had felt before. Then the voice on the other end spoke again, slower, more deliberate. "Are you sure? Can you prove it?" Caleb's throat tightened. The proof was in the ship behind him. The ship that was waiting. The proof was in the countdown that had already ended, the alien systems that had come alive, the ship's message. He glanced back at the darkened interior of the vessel. The ship hummed again, softer now, as if acknowledging his words. "I don't know how to prove it," Caleb replied, his voice hoarse. "But I've seen it. I've heard it. This isn't a hoax. It's real. And if we don't act, if we don't respond with peace, we'll lose everything." Another long silence stretched across the line, and Caleb's mind raced with every possible outcome. Would Earth be able to trust him? Would they understand that this wasn't a threat? That this was a chance for something new? Something better? "Dr. Harris," the voice on the other end said finally, a heavy pause between the words. "We'll prepare a team, but you need to stay in contact. This is monumental. We'll need more than just your word. We need proof. We need the whole world to see what you've found." The voice was urgent now, but there was also an undercurrent of uncertainty. Caleb's heart sank. He knew the world wasn't ready for this kind of discovery. They wouldn't be. The fear of the unknown was too strong, too entrenched in human history. And yet, the reality was there, staring him in the face. The aliens were coming, and he had chosen to make that call. "I'll stay in contact," Caleb said, his voice steadier now. "But the clock is ticking. I don't know how long we have. Prepare for the worst, but hope for the best." With a final heavy click, the call ended. Caleb stood alone in the silence of the Mojave Desert, the alien ship humming behind him, the weight of his decision settling like a stone in his chest. There was no turning back now. The world would soon know what had been hidden beneath the sands of the desert. The fleet was coming, and Earth's future would be decided in the coming days. The quiet after the call felt like an eternity, the desert stretching endlessly in front of Caleb, a barren wasteland that seemed to mock the weight of the decision he had just made. The young phone screen faded to black in his hand, and for a moment he stood still, rooted to the spot. The alien ship loomed behind him, its dark, iridescent surface almost blending into the night. The only thing that moved was the faint glimmer of stars overhead, but Caleb's thoughts were far away, racing at a pace that was impossible to follow. The world would know soon. He had no idea what that would mean, what kind of chaos would follow the revelation that not only had extraterrestrial life been discovered, but that their future had just been placed in humanity's hands. Fear, doubt, and suspicion would flood the globe. Caleb could already hear the questions echoing through his mind. Are they here to invade? Will they destroy us? But he knew the truth. The truth he had seen in the ship's projections, in the memories. The ship had shared with him. They weren't invaders. They were survivors. But survival wasn't enough for the rest of the world to understand. And yet, Caleb had already made his decision. There was no turning back. The stars above twinkled in the still night sky, but Caleb's mind was clouded with the enormity of his promise. The countdown on the ship had stopped, and he could almost feel it like a tether stretching across the galaxy, pulling the fleet closer to Earth. In less than 24 hours, the alien fleet would arrive, and with them, the fate of 2 species dot behind him. The ship hummed softly, a quiet, constant pulse that resonated through the bones of the desert floor. Caleb turned back to it, drawn to its alien presence, as if it were alive, as if it were waiting for something, waiting for him. The decision had been made, but now it was time to prepare for the consequences. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something momentous, something far bigger than any discovery he had ever made. The crackling of his satellite phone disrupted his thoughts. Caleb's hand shook slightly as he pulled it from his pocket, screen lighting up with a message. It was from the research facility he had contacted earlier. He opened it without hesitation. "We have your coordinates." A team is being assembled. Prepare yourself. We need proof, Dr. Harris. The world needs to see this. His breath hitched as he read the words. A team? Proof? The weight of his promise to contact Earth had just begun to settle in. He had no more answers than he had before, but now he had responsibility. He was the first human to make contact with an alien species, and now he had to guide humanity through the unknown. What if they didn't believe him? What if they reacted with violence, with fear? He was just one man. What power did he have in the face of something so monumental? The thought made him dizzy. He gripped the phone tightly, his knuckles white, but there was no time to dwell on doubts. The team would be coming, and they would need to see the ship. They would need proof, evidence that this was real. He couldn't let them down. Caleb stepped forward, walking back into the depths of the craft, the cool air inside a stark contrast to the blistering heat of the desert outside. The ship's glow illuminated the walls as he moved toward the central control room, the heart of the vessel. The alien symbols danced across the surface of the ship's interior, shifting and changing in ways that made Caleb's head spin. His fingers traced along the lines, trying to make sense of them, but the meaning eluded him. He moved toward the console again, his mind still racing. The ship was waiting for him, its systems alive and responsive to his presence. The ship's consciousness was like a silent guide, pushing him forward, urging him to act, to prepare for the fleet's arrival. But as he approached the console, something new happened. The ship's systems activated, a soft glow filling the room as new holographic images formed in the air. These images were different from the ones Caleb had seen before. They were not maps or diagrams. They were ... faces, the alien figures he had seen earlier. Their large eyes and elongated features now appeared in vivid detail. Their faces seemed to shimmer, their expressions full of sorrow and hope. The ship was showing him them, not as projections, but as if they were present, as if they were speaking to him. The voice was not just in his mind now. It was in the air. Around him, a soft whisper, like the rustling of leaves. Caleb. We are here, the voice echoed, a chorus of voices blending together, speaking in unison. Our time has come. Caleb's chest tightened. His hand hovered over the console, and the alien figures in front of him blinked, their eyes glowing. It felt so real, so intimate. The ship's presence filled the room, and Caleb could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the aliens, their anxiety, their fear. They were so close. He could feel the weight of their existence pressing in on him. They were here to ask for refuge, to find a new home, Earth, his world. Caleb couldn't help but wonder what it would mean for his species, for Earth, if they said yes. Would humanity rise to the occasion, or would they turn away, driven by fear and suspicion? The voice broke into his thoughts again, soft and clear. We have no place left but here. We offer you peace. Please, Caleb, help us. The pleading in the voice was undeniable. Caleb felt a deep pang of compassion, a connection that went beyond reason. This wasn't just about science. This wasn't just about discovery. This was about the survival of an entire species. He could feel it in his bones. And in that moment, he realized what he had to do. Help us. The ship repeated, and for the first time since the discovery, Caleb felt a tear slip down his cheek, not from fear, but from the weight of the choice ahead. He closed his eyes for a moment, standing alone in the alien ship, the voices of the beings who had crossed the stars echoing in his mind. They were waiting for him to act, to open the door. And with the fleet arriving in less than 24 hours, Caleb knew that humanity would either step forward into a new future, or forever be trapped in the isolation of its own making. The decision would come. The world would decide. But it would be his actions that would determine whether humanity would answer the call. He had no more time to wait. The aliens were coming, and Caleb Harris had to be ready. The air inside the ship was thick with anticipation, the hum of its systems a constant presence that seemed to vibrate through Caleb's very bones. The alien ship, with its glowing symbols and smooth, organic contours, now felt like an extension of his own body, as though it had become a part of him, feeding him the energy he needed to face what was coming. The voice in his mind, the collective consciousness of the alien race, still echoed in his thoughts, urging him to act. Time had run out. The fleet was on its way, and in less than 24 hours, Earth would have to make its choice. A choice that could determine whether humanity would open its doors to the aliens or slam them shut, forever keeping them in the dark, isolated from the greater universe. Caleb's hands shook as he sat down at the ship's central console, the alien interface glowing in front of him like a beacon in the darkness. His eyes flickered over the holographic projections, the maps, the star charts, the images of the fleet approaching Earth. It was all so clear now. The alien race had been fleeing for so long, desperate for a home. They weren't conquerors, they weren't invaders. They were survivors, and their journey had brought them to Earth, to his world. Caleb had made his decision, and now it was time to see it through. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. The countdown had stopped, but the feeling of impending arrival still hung in the air. There was no time left for second-guessing, no time left for fear. He had chosen to trust them, to give them a chance at survival, and now he would have to make the world believe. Caleb reached for the comm system, his fingers trembling slightly as he keyed in the sequence that would send the message to Earth. The world would need to know what was coming, what they were about to face. There would be fear, certainly, mistrust, panic, but there would also be the possibility of peace, the possibility of a new beginning, a chance for two species to work together, to create something greater than themselves. The comm system crackled to life, and Caleb spoke, his voice steady but full of weight. "This is Dr. Caleb Harris. I'm speaking from the Mojave Desert, where I've made a discovery that will change the course of human history. An alien vessel, a ship, has crash-landed here. I've made contact with the beings who once inhabited it. They are refugees, fleeing a dying world. They are not invaders. They are not enemies. They seek only peace. And the fleet is on its way." Caleb paused, the silence in the ship pressing in on him, and he felt the weight of the moment. He couldn't take it back now. His words had been spoken, and the ship's systems had already sent out the signal. It was too late to change his mind. "Humanity stands at a crossroads," he continued, his voice more intense now, a raw edge creeping in. "We have a choice. We can reject these beings, cast them aside, or we can offer them refuge, show them that we are a species capable of compassion, of understanding. The fleet is coming. We have less than 24 hours to decide how we will respond." There was a long pause, the weight of the message sinking in. Caleb stood up, pacing around the small room, the voice of the aliens still echoing in his mind. "I've seen the destruction of their world," he whispered, almost to himself. "I've felt their pain. They need us, and we need them." Suddenly, the ship's hum intensified, a deep, resonant vibration that filled the air. Caleb froze, looking toward the central console. The lights flickered, and the holographic display flared brightly, showing the fleet, hundreds of ships lining. Up in space, their course set directly for Earth. He felt his chest tighten, the enormity of the situation crashing over him like a tidal wave. He had made the right choice. He knew it deep down. But would Earth understand? Would they see the truth, or would they be swept away by fear? The ship's AI responded, its voice soft but urgent. The fleet is nearly here. Will they come? The question echoed in Caleb's mind. Would humanity rise to meet the challenge? Would they offer peace, or would they push the aliens away, lost in their own fear? The ship's consciousness had given him everything, and now it was waiting for the world to respond. But Caleb knew he knew that humanity's response would come down to one simple thing. Trust in the unknown. Trust in the possibility of peace. The door to the ship's command room hissed open, and Caleb stepped forward, moving toward the glowing interface. His heart raced as he keyed in the final sequence that would send a message to the fleet, to the alien ships that were already en route to Earth. He didn't know what kind of reception they would receive, but he had to try. The ship's systems hummed, the holograms flickering to life again as Caleb keyed in the command. The final message would be simple. Earth would be ready, or it wouldn't. The aliens were coming, and humanity had to decide whether they would welcome them or turn them away. Caleb took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the final sequence. He knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. The fate of two species, of an entire world, rested on the decision he had made. He pressed the button. The message was sent. Outside, in the vast expanse of space, the alien fleet continued its journey, their course set for Earth. Caleb had opened the door. Now it was up to humanity to walk through it as the stars above the Mojave Desert twinkled in the cold night sky. Caleb stood at the threshold of a new era, unsure of what the future would bring, but certain of one thing: everything had just changed. And now all he could do was wait.